We are in the middle of our second major renovation, and this time around we bought our property in a slightly different way. Now, we hear a lot about just a traditional sale and also auction properties, but have you ever come across a committed offer sale before? Now, we hadn't either, and that is what led to an awful lot of anxiety. We thought it was a scam, and we really thought it was one of those things that was way too good to be true. In this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly what a committed offer sale is, and also the pros and cons of the whole transaction for us. Now, this was a completely new type of purchase for us. We'd never come across it before. I think it's something that may be becoming more mainstream. There's only a couple of agents that I found that do this, and I think it might be something that you might be interested in if you're also looking to find a property that's possibly an investment property, you want to do something up, then this video is for you. So a committed offer sale is formed in a very similar way to an auction. You place a bid online, but it's not a competitive environment like you would have in an auction house, or waiting for a specific day for that sale to come up. Secondly, you will pay a certain percentage of a transaction fee. Now, with the estate agent that we used, it was a 3% transaction fee, plus an admin fee of £500. When you initially place that bid on the property, it takes a £1,500 bidding security fee. Of course, if you're not successful, this money does get refunded to you. So you basically, when you put an offer into the property, you need to factor in that transaction fee to work out how much money that you want to put forward to the property. It seems quite confusing because it is very, very similar to an auction, but it is not. The difference is that it's a normal transaction, it's normal transaction timescales. All it is that you're paying that upfront commitment, which basically is so the seller knows that you're committed, and in a way it makes both parties feel a little bit more secure in the transaction, because you know someone can't come along and gazump you, and then you lose the property sort of 4 weeks later. So in a nutshell, a committed offer sale is an upfront amount of money, normally a 3% transaction fee. You place the bid online normally, and once it's secured, you've committed to that offer and buying that property. It ties you in the exact same way as an auction. If you pull out, you will lose all of the money that you have put in, unless of course the property is not mortgageable, then you would be entitled to a refund. The estate agent we used was called Smart Property Sale. I'll pop it in the comments below. But yeah, very, very new to us. Kind of very scary, putting an upfront amount of money and not knowing if it's legitimate. We did check to make sure the company was legit before doing so, and checking out the reviews, which there wasn't many of. But that was it in a nutshell. Now I've explained that, I'm going to go through the pros and cons of the process. And actually, it's worked out really well for us, but I think it's important to be transparent if you're looking at something similar. So let's get started with the pros. Now, if we're looking at it from the other perspective of the person who's selling the property, the reason people are attracted to it is because the seller has absolutely no fees with this process. Instead, the fees are passed on to the buyer, which of course is not as favourable for the buyer. It also means there's going to be less people that are interested because they have to put that upfront commitment, which a lot of people don't have the money for, or they don't want to pay for if they're tied into selling their property and their money is in the property. So you can look at it two ways. It's great for the seller, but also it's an opportunity for buyers who are not having much success with other properties in the market. They're getting snapped up very quickly, and that was very true for us. I'm not lying that we viewed over 50 properties. We offered on way over 10 properties, and because we're looking for a specific type of project to work on but also live in, it was investment territory, and cash buyers were always winning against us. Whereas this one, there was no interest in it because you had to put that upfront money, and it was largely overpriced on the market as well. And the second thing with that is it brushes away time wasters because you have to put that upfront money. So first time buyers weren't looking at the property, cash buyers weren't really looking at the property either because it was so overpriced, and it's a big commitment, and that is why it's called a committed offer sale. And so for us, it meant that they barely had any viewings already, and we were the only people that offered on the property, and it had been on the market for about 4 months by the time we actually went to look at the property. Now, secondly, I was really dubious about this property that was listed on there, mostly because I was like, why? Like, is this a scam? I was really unsure. What we basically did is we upped the amount of money when we were looking on Zoopla, just to see if there was anything out there and to see if we could come down on price on any of them. Now, this property, we actually got £40,000 less than the asking price. It was largely overinflated. It was nowhere near worth what was on there, and that is one of the reasons I believe that it wasn't getting much interest. It was out of people's budgets for doing investment properties. Secondly, it was an amazing property, and I was just like, if this was listed in the traditional way, this would have literally been sold within a week, and actually the seller would have got so much more money for that property because it would have had a lot of competition of buyers. But because they had this committed offer sale where you had to put the money up front, they weren't going to get what they wanted for it because you had to put a 3% transaction fee down before. So in our eyes, we actually did take a really big gamble with it, not knowing if it was a legit process, but we ended up getting a property that we absolutely love, and we got it for a really good price as well. So it's quite a convoluted way of purchasing a property, but it does brush off time wasters, and it does enable you to find properties as what I like to call it, a diamond in the rough, which is exactly what we found. Now, another thing to add is a lot of the properties on this website, website Smart Property Sale, they also do auctions as well, so it is worth checking before, because that bit wasn't very clear on the website. But a lot of properties are probate properties. Now, the problem with buying a probate property with, you know, your local estate agent is a lot of the times probate has not even been granted yet, and they are allowed to list their properties once it's actually been applied for. However, on Smart Property Sale, of course, you're already putting some money up front. The seller has to have had probate granted. They've got to have the certificate before they can even list it. So this means that you aren't going to have that 2 to 3 to even 5 month time delay when you're purchasing a probate property with a local estate agent. And most of the time with probate properties, they want to get rid of the property. It's going to be a renovation project if that's what you're looking for, and it makes the process a little bit more streamlined and easier because all parties are interested in moving it forwards as quickly as possible. Another good thing is, obviously, you do have to put that upfront money, but if the property is deemed not mortgageable, you do of course get a full refund, so you don't have to worry about continuing with a property just for the sake of it, especially if it's structurally, you know, defective. Now, another huge bonus as opposed to a traditional auction property is you don't have to wait for an auction date. It's not a competitive bidding environment, and you aren't going to be up against tens of other people who want the same property. Basically, the property is listed like an auction. It's got like a set date, but you can literally go on, log on and bid on the property whenever you want, and it goes straight to the seller, and they'll then come back and say, yeah, happy with the offer, or, you know, we want a higher bid. So it works in a similar way to a local estate agent when they're doing that negotiation process with the seller. Now, let's talk about the cons, because there are cons to this buying process, as there is with anything. The first con is obviously you've got to pay an upfront transaction fee. Now, I don't know if other estate agents do this, but with Smart Property Sale, it was a 3% upfront payment plus a £500 admin fee. So you're talking thousands, and it's very difficult to go down this route if you're not an investor, or you've not got the spare cash, or if you're waiting to sell your property to release that equity for a new property. So instantly it becomes quite difficult for a lot of people to do it. It benefits the seller greatly, but not so much the buyer, and that's why you do get a lot less buyers that are interested in the process, which I guess could be seen as a pro, as it worked in our favour eventually. But having to outlay that a lot of money it made us very anxious because we didn't know if it was a legitimate process. It's a lot of money, and we just didn't know if it was real, which was the scariest thing. I definitely thought it was a scam, which it's not, which is why I'm making this video, because I'm sure someone out there is looking for similar answers as I was myself, and no one was talking about this way to purchase a property, so it's quite important to mention that. It definitely wasn't a scam, but if it's a different estate agent I've not mentioned, do your due diligence first. Ask a mortgage advisor if they've heard of them, look on Companies House, and just all reviews and stuff like that, just to make sure that it definitely is a legit company. Now, it is a committed offer, so you've put that money forwards. If you want to pull out, you decide 4 weeks later it's not the house for you, you will not get a refund. You will lose all of that money that you have put into the property, which is a lot. This is where you take a gamble with the property, and is where we took a gamble. We obviously checked the property for all sort of major defects when we did the viewings. I encourage everyone to do the same when you're doing this process, and also for auctions it's exactly the same. You commit to it, which means you're going to lose that money if you suddenly find something later down the line. I'm not 100% sure if you can renegotiate pricing. I know you probably can with an auction at all because it's normally sold as seen, but I'd probably say you couldn't negotiate the pricing with a property like this as well, where it's a committed offer sale, because you've obviously already paid 3% of the purchase price. So you can obviously go and have a survey done once you're during the process, but if loads and loads of stuff comes back, you're kind of committed. Unless you want to lose that money, you've got to go forward with the process. Now, we actually didn't choose to do a property survey. Now, a lot of people will say that's the wrong thing, you've got to do one. Now, if you are going through this process, the same with auctions, a lot of people actually get their property surveys done prior to even putting a bid in, just so they know what they're sort of dealing with. We didn't get a property survey done. Now, we're kind of lucky in the fact that my partner is very experienced with buildings and trades and looking for certain things in a property you need to look for. We've also got people in our families that are very involved with property. And of course, we are completely ripping our house out now. Like, we've had to take everything back to the beginning. Everything is being replaced. So we kind of knew we were dealing with everything anyway, and we have found things along the way that we weren't aware of, and that's absolutely fine because we were committed and we were aware there was going to be a lot of work to do. But if you're not familiar with renovation properties, if you're a little bit unsure, I would get a survey before you put that committed offer in, because once you are, you have sealed the deal and you will lose a lot of money if you choose to back out at a later date. Now, one thing I did find, and it's very different to a traditional estate agent, is that when you sell for a traditional estate agent, they don't actually get their fee until the property transaction has gone through. Now, with this estate agent, they get their fee up front before they've done any of the legwork, and that is what I didn't like about it, because it felt as if once they got the money, they didn't care. I was getting constant phone calls prior to putting the offer in, and then as soon as it had gone through, I never got to speak to the lead estate agent or the owner of the company ever again. It was literally all done through text, and it was so frustrating. This is what also led me to keep thinking, is this a scam? Is this a scam? Because it took 4 weeks for the seller to send across their initial property pack to our solicitors, and through text, it's very easy to hide behind things and say you've spoken to someone, but we had to do a lot of the chasing ourselves in the end because it was just hopeless. So I think that aspect was really bad, because it felt like there was no after sale process. They've got their money, they don't really have any motivation to help out or to really go the extra mile. And even on the day we got the keys, it literally took them over 50 minutes to tell me the code to get the key out of the property. So that side of things is really bad, and I think, I don't know if I'd do the process again. We've got a great project out of it, and the gamble has been worth it, but the stress and the chasing and all of that was just not great to deal with, especially as you're already dealing with other solicitors and your sale as well of your property. So yeah, I think a local estate agent is much better for that fact. You can turn up to their office if you want to. You can always speak to someone on the phone, but I hated the fact that I could never speak to someone on the phone. They use sort of like virtual assistants to man their lines, so you have to keep giving your details constantly if you kind of want to speak to someone. But yeah, the main person I was dealing with just texting constantly, which I hate. Just speak to me on the phone is so much easier. But yeah, that side of things wasn't so great, and that's why I think it's important that I mention this, because it's a big deciding factor if I'd actually do this process again. Now, another thing to think about, and it's not necessarily this process, but if your seller has chosen to sell through an estate agent like this, they're trying to cut costs, and it usually means that they're going to get a very cheap online solicitor, which they call a warehouse for solicitors, where they basically deal with so many cases and they're usually terrible. And in this case, case, this happened, and the solicitors for them were absolutely awful. It would be weeks until we would hear stuff. We'd be constantly chasing, and they just wouldn't be sending stuff like weeks after being asked. It makes the whole process so much more stressful, very, very difficult. So it's just another thing to bear in mind. And I also think, very similar to online estate agents like Yopa, they kind of pigeonhole you into using specific solicitors, and they're normally really, really bad and cheap, which is why our seller probably went with them, because they wanted to sell the property for free in the first place. So yeah, it's something to bear in mind. If someone is selling something for free and they're not caring about costs, it's probably going to mean that they've got cheap solicitors lined up as well. And I think the biggest con is the not knowing. We did not know anything about this process, which I've already mentioned. Couldn't find anything online about this. I honestly, please tell me in the comments below if you've heard of this method before, if there's other estate agents that do this. But it was so new to us that we were taking a gamble. We were sending this money across, not knowing if it was a legit experience. We didn't know anything about the seller. There was no for sale sign outside of the property. Like, all signs pointed to it being a scam. Yet we just kind of went for it. It was our last ditch attempt. We'd already been selling our property, that had been going through for nearly 3 months. We had to find somewhere. It was the best property we had found, and I think because we were quite desperate, we were like, let's just give it a go. It's a huge gamble for us, and it's paid off. The house is real, we're in the property, we own the property, and it's really been a great opportunity for us. And we're just currently in the midst of renovating it and doing it up now, as you'll see from my other videos. But I really wanted to share this experience with you today because I just didn't know anything about this way to buy properties. We know a lot about traditional buying properties, we hear a lot about auctions, but we don't hear anything about a committed offer sale. So I wanted to document this today in case any of you are looking at purchasing a property in a similar way. There's some really great pros, but there are cons, so I think you've got to weigh up the two. And again, it's a committed offer sale, so once you commit to that, you've kind of got to go through with it, unless you want to lose all that money you've put in. But yeah, I can assure you it wasn't a scam who we bought it with, luckily for us. I will put all the details in the caption below so you can have a look at them if you want. Do let me know if you've experienced anything similar, if you've purchased through them yourself. But other than that, I really hope you found today's video useful. If you enjoyed it, do give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more property videos. I talk a lot about leasehold, and we're also documenting our entire renovation at the moment, which I hope you all enjoy as well. But I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on my next video.